You've just bought your dream home. The excitement is real, then bam, your first mortgage payment hits and you're staring at your bank account wondering, what have I done? Today we're going to be diving into some wild TikToks about people who are house poor and dealing with a serious case of buyer's remorse. I'm going to break it down and give you some serious tips on how to avoid ending up in this situation. Spoiler alert, it's totally avoidable, and I'll tell you how. Oh yeah, if this is the first video you've come across of mine, then you're probably wondering, who the heck is this guy and who are you to give tips? Hi, I'm Nate Friesen. I'm a registered real estate agent in Ontario, Canada, and I've helped many clients buy, sell, and make wise investments. Stick around to the end because you're going to want to hear these tips, especially if you're thinking about buying a home or you're already in the process of it. Let's get into it.
I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty. Okay, when I lived with my parents, I was living my best luxury lifestyle. I went to South Korea, bought a 2000 plane ticket, didn't even blink twice. I went shopping, luxury goods, all that. Was traveling, was just, I was living it up. I felt rich. I had no bills. And I had a full-time 9-to-5 job. I was working as a nurse, okay? I was killing it. I bought my own house. That first mortgage payment came in and I was like, oh, this is a situation. But at first you think you can handle it, right? Like, what's a couple thou? What's a couple thou? I got it. But then the pipes in my 80-year-old home broke immediately as soon as I bought the house. Wiped out my savings. Then another pipe in a different area of the house broke. Okay, I'm struggling. Okay, I need help. Then my neighbor's pipe, it was a twin house, her pipe broke. And she didn't believe that her pipe broke, but her pipe broke on my side of the house. So all of that water that was coming down was spraying into my home. And then my water heater broke. When I tell y'all, I went from living in the lap of luxury to destitute immediately. Now, don't get me to fooling y'all, because it was worth it in the long run, because that house is now worth like 2 times what it was worth then. So I'm actually doing pretty good. But at the time, when I tell you I was struggling, I had to go to my parents every other day for dinner because your girl could not feed herself.
All right, so she had a very lighthearted reaction to her situation at the time. Thankfully, it seems like that's not the case anymore, but it definitely was a very real struggle for her in the beginning. And it is a very real struggle for a lot of people when they buy their first home if they purchase above what they're really capable of carrying. So it seemed like she used to really live life to the fullest, so to speak. She spoke of buying a plane ticket without even giving it a second thought, going on trips, just basically doing whatever she felt like doing because she had that option. And then once she purchased her first house, with all the things and unexpected costs that came up with home ownership, she just didn't have that option anymore. It was no longer financially feasible or an option for her just to go out and do things that she enjoyed or, do things she'd like to experience. So my first tip with this video in mind is don't forget about your lifestyle when you're purchasing a home. It's easy to get caught up and excited about the luxury finishes, the granite countertops, the nice white cupboards, whatever it might be that is really attracting you to that home, but make sure that you're bearing in mind the cost of everything else that comes with home ownership, as well as your lifestyle that you'd like to maintain after purchasing a home. I think I was really Italian there. I was just mangia, which is kind of funny because I actually have Italian in me, and my papa is full-blooded Italian. So I think that's just the natural Italian coming out in me. But yeah, don't get caught up in all the niceties of the home and the things that make it so appealing, and forget about your lifestyle that you'd like to maintain after home ownership, as well as keeping in mind the costs of home ownership. So keeping that in mind, if you like to go on a couple trips a year, budget that into your lifestyle when choosing a home and take into account your mortgage, property taxes, bills, utilities, and of course the most unexpected one of all, which she found out the hard way, home maintenance costs. Things happen. Unfortunately and unexpectedly, things do happen when it comes to home ownership. Pipes burst, roofs leak, these are the unexpected things that you can't really anticipate when buying a home, but you need to plan for when you are purchasing, because there are things that need to be taken care of immediately most of the time and not optional. Home improvements are optional and you can do those any other time, to upgrade your home to your liking and maybe to that level of house that you initially wanted but couldn't really afford. But those are optional savings that you save for in the long term, whereas home maintenance are things that usually come up unexpectedly and need to be taken care of right away. So for instance, if you're pre-approved for a $600,000 home, you might want to personally set a limit of $500,000 to keep in mind the lifestyle you'd like to maintain afterwards as well. Your mortgage broker isn't thinking about your lifestyle when they're calculating what you can afford to buy a home. They're thinking about what debt you're currently carrying and what your income level is and where that kind of falls in the threshold of your yearly salary versus what you're going to be paying for your house over the course of a year. So you're going to need to do that personal calculation to make sure you can still afford the lifestyle that you want as far as traveling goes, keeping your kids in sports or dance or whatever it might be, to make sure you can maintain that lifestyle after you buy your first home or buy your next home. Because nothing would suck more than to know that you should be able to afford the things that you want to do, but you can't anymore because you purchased above your means. All right, so let's get into video number 2.
Great question. So when we bought the house in St. Pete, first of all, St. Pete school districts are not really good. The public school districts are not very good. Luckily, Florida has the school choice program, so you get a voucher if you want to put your kid in private schools. And so we knew we were going to put him in a private school. When we bought that house, we had selected a private school. And within 30 days, we knew that it was not a good fit for him. He was in kindergarten. He was being bullied. He hated it. He cried going to school. He would cry leaving school, telling us how horrible it was. And frankly, his reading and math skills were surpassing his peers in the class. So we ended up moving him to a completely different school. We love it there now, but the school was 25 minutes away. So the commute to and from both in the morning and the afternoon was a bit much. Second to that, we had really tried to fit a square peg into a round hole. The house was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and with both of us working from home, we were using essentially one of the bedrooms as an office, and then my husband was just like using the living room as an office, and we just felt like we were on top of one another. And I think that we were very attracted to the property because it did have a little bit of a view of the ocean, but it also had this beautiful foliage all over the property, and it ended up being just a significant more amount of maintenance than we just bit off more than we could chew. So we decided to look more into a maintenance-free opportunity, which is the apartment. And so I can't deny that this is the view out from my office. Like, insane. I know I'm blessed. I'll never probably be able to afford a condo that has a view like this. So we're really liking the apartment life. Our son thinks that we live in a hotel. And it's nice to not have to worry about when things break, we can just call maintenance. And frankly, the cost of living here was almost the same as the property that we were living in. If you factor in, property taxes, flood insurance, as well as homeowners insurance. So that's why we did. And the reason why we left the furniture is because the people that bought our house were moving from the state of Washington, and they didn't want to have to move any of their furniture. They sold their house with their furniture in it. So it was a win-win for all of us. We left the furniture. They actually just kept it as their own. And then we ended up buying just some cheap stuff to fill the apartment to keep us going until we decide where we want to land next.
All right, so it seems like there were some things that they didn't really think about when they were purchasing the home that they apparently just sold and moved from. So that kind of leads into my next tip, which is do your homework. Buying a home is a big investment, and you really need to make sure that you're doing your homework and researching and thinking about the future as well. You want to think about the long term, not just the short term. Is this good for my needs now, or is it going to be good for my needs 10 years from now as well? Granted, I know not everybody stays in their home for 10 years. Heck, some people don't even stay in their home for 5 years before they move on to the next one. But if you know you're looking for a long-term place to settle down, make sure you're doing your research and thinking about the future when purchasing your home. So a couple things that I kind of picked out from this one. I know some of the things you can't really anticipate and research in a sense. Like, it sounds like the school that the house was close to, their son was getting bullied at, and he was kind of surpassing his peers in his learning ability, I guess, and the curriculum wasn't keeping up with him essentially. So, those are some things. I mean, bullying you can't anticipate. It's very unfortunate. It sucks that it's still a thing. Unfortunately, bullying you can't really research and anticipate. It's just something that happens sometimes. Unfortunately, it sucks that bullying still happens. It's a very prevalent issue, and it's a very unfortunate thing that happens to a lot of kids in school. So you can't really research that, but you can kind of look at the school's ratings and maybe talk to other parents in the area who you might know to figure out if it's going to suit your kids' learning abilities and where they're at, intellectually. Again, just some things you can kind of do to prepare prepare for that, potentially. Again, you're not always going to know these things. So it sounded like they had to move him to a school 30 minutes away, basically. So there's a bit of a commute there, every single day, 5 days a week, not to mention with them going to work or doing whatever they do for work. And then at the same time, it sounds like the home they purchased was just too small for their needs. They didn't really think it through when purchasing the home because they needed office space, a room for their kid, themselves, and it sounded like they were just kind of on top of each other, unfortunately. So just make sure that when you are purchasing a home, you're thinking of the long term as well as your current needs. Think of your needs versus would be nice to haves. Granite countertops are not really a need, but if you have a kid and yourselves and then you also work from home, you need to make sure you have a minimum of 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms and a den or something like that can be made into an office. So think about your current needs and also your future needs as well. Because say, for instance, you plan on having another kid, you need to make sure that there's going to be an extra space for them to move into, and you're not just going to have to sell the house and move again in, say, a couple of years or so. So when you're looking for a home, what I like to do with my clients is sit down, have a discussion, and write down a list of, their absolute needs and as well as their would be nice to haves. I love to check everything off in this column on the needs, as best as we can within their budget. And then also there would be nice to haves. If we can throw a few of those in there too, within their budget and make it work, then that's even better. I love to make my clients extra happy, by getting them things that they didn't think that they'd be able to afford, which does happen from time to time. But the priority list obviously is the needs, both immediate and future. I was working with some clients last summer who were looking for a house. They were renting at the time, but it was only a 2-bedroom. They had 2 girls and they had a third on the way. So they were looking to buy their first house. So I knew that when we were looking, we needed to look for a house that had a minimum of 3 bedrooms because they needed one for themselves, one for their 2 girls who could share because they were little enough that they could share a bedroom at the time, and then also a third for the third child who was on the way. So that was what we could find for them because they were looking with a relatively small budget, but we managed to find it not only on time before the third baby came along, but we also found them something that was suitable for them for the immediate term and for at least quite a few years down the road because the girls are young enough that they'll be able to get a good chunk of time out of it before they need to upsize to somewhere a little bigger for each of them to have their own space. Not only that, but there was a fourth, couldn't really classify it as a bedroom in the basement. Wasn't really legally a bedroom, but there was a window in there and it was a separate room that they could use as an office or another bedroom if they wanted to down the road. Or even just dig out the window, make it a little bit bigger for an egress window, and then it's a legal bedroom and they don't have to worry about their children's safety as well. So bedrooms and bathrooms are often a non-negotiable. You need however many you need in the immediate, and then also if you're planning for the future, you need to think of that 1 extra or 2 extra bedrooms as well. If it'll fit within your budget, because obviously things go up in price as you add more bedrooms and bathrooms. So think of bedrooms, bathrooms, and then also think of location, schools that are nearby for your kids, how close you are to work or to highway access to get to work. These are all things you need to take into consideration when you're buying a home. Like I said, write down a needs list versus a wants list. If we can make the two kind of integrate to some degree or level, all the better, but main thing is we nail everything in the needs list. Not to mention if you have a written list, it's easier when you're going and looking at properties or looking at pictures of properties online, not to manipulate yourself into thinking some of these things that are driving up the price of the property are a need when in reality they're actually a want. So if you have that needs versus wants list, you'll be able to remind yourself of what you actually need versus what your brain is trying to convince yourself that you need. So make sure you're keeping things realistic so that you can keep your budget in check and you're not over purchasing or ending up purchasing the wrong thing and then it ends up costing you money immediately anyways to break the mortgage, etc., realtor fees, property taxes, adjustments, all that stuff that needs to be paid out if you have to sell and then move somewhere else. And then it sounds like they moved and rented, so then they needed money for first and last, which I'm assuming they had from the proceeds of their home, but it's just an extra cost that you didn't really need to put out if you'd just done some more homework. And let's take a look at the final video.
Buying a home as a single parent is a bad idea. I'm a single parent who bought a home and I am thousands of dollars in debt. I thought that buying a home would be the best thing for my daughter and I. I didn't take into consideration property taxes. My mortgage went from $1,400 to $1,900 in 2 years. I'm in debt because I had 3 water leaks. Not only did I have to pay the rise in property taxes, but I had to pay for the maintenance in my home. I definitely believe that homeownership requires 2 incomes. All of the things that I could do before I bought the home, all of the things I could provide to my daughter before I bought my home, I can no longer do. I am what they call house poor. If you are a single parent looking to buy a home, I hope you have thousands of dollars in savings. Equity is cool and all, but when it comes at a price, I don't think I'm willing to pay it anymore.
All right, so she does make a couple fair points in that little TikTok there. Unfortunately, it has become very tough for most people, especially in North America, to purchase a home on one income. Gone are the days where that is the norm and you can provide for a family on one income alone. Things are just so much more expensive now, including housing, food, utilities, everything. Everything you can think of has gone way up in price, and unfortunately, income just has not matched it close enough. So I can totally sympathize and understand that buying a house, it seems like a good investment for your future, for your kids' future, to give them a stable place to live, a place to call home, and a place for you to build equity and memories in. But on one income, I can understand how that would totally stress her out, stretch her, and kind of overburden her in a sense financially, because like she said, she's in debt because of unexpected home maintenance costs that I, mentioned earlier. Things come up and things happen when you're buying a home that don't happen when you're renting, because it's not your property. It's not your responsibility. So I can totally understand and sympathize with her struggle there, being a single mom or a single parent. I'm not one myself, but just putting myself in her shoes, I can understand how that would be very stressful and straining financially as well. She obviously, like I said before, didn't think about the lifestyle she'd like to afford as well, but maybe she had a tight budget. I don't know, but just another perspective. If you're thinking about buying a home by yourself, make sure you really think it out and do the math if you can afford to carry the home if things go up. Like she mentioned, her property taxes, I guess, went up. I mean, that seems like a pretty big jump. I don't know if the $1,400 to $1,900 or whatever it was that she said was due to property taxes, or if she was in a variable mortgage and her interest rate went up, but that seems like a pretty big jump just for property taxes. But again, I don't know where she lives and if that's the norm when things are raised, but make sure you can afford it if those things do go up. So if your property taxes go up, or if your interest rate goes up, and then as a result your mortgage payment goes up, you can afford those things. And most importantly, don't let the shine of home ownership outweigh your current ability to afford it. Debt sucks, and especially when you're carrying debt and really high payments and you just feel like you can't get your head above water, that's not a good place to be, and you don't want to be there and stuck there for who knows how long, just for the sake of being able to bear the title of homeowner. I fully understand the plight of the current economic circumstances surrounding home ownership and how expensive it has become, especially in the last 5 years. It's become unbelievably expensive compared to what it was rising at pre-COVID. Especially in Ontario, especially where I'm located, the average home price went from like $350,000 to $400,000 up to like $750,000 in a matter of 2 years. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. So please take everything I say as a means to try and help you in your dream and goal of home ownership, to try and make sure that you get there, but also you get there and you're going to be able to stay there. You're not going to be incredibly stressed and strained while you're there. Home ownership is a great thing. You're building your self-equity, you're passing down an asset to your future children or whoever. It definitely has a lot of benefits, but there are a lot of costs and things that we don't think about that come with it as well. So again, please just take these as tips to help you get to home ownership and maintain your mental health as well as your financial health when you get there. So I think we can all agree being house poor and having buyer's remorse is something that we all want to avoid. But the good news is you can avoid it with the proper mindset and preparation. By sticking to a solid budget, doing thorough research, and keeping a realistic perspective, you can make a smart and informed decision when buying your next home. If you found these tips helpful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real estate advice, reactions, and more. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to help out. And until next time, happy house hunting.